Hi guys, I have a YouTube channel where I talk about many different subjects from history in Turkish. As a background Turkish Canadian, it was my duty to share the same information in English. So as I studied archaeology, I believe in reading a lot to have an intellectual brain and encourage my kids to do so. As they grew up in Canada, I wanted them to see in the future what I was talking about in these clips. I want to give you an Eastern point of view on history while trying to be not-sided. As English is my second language, I can't help thinking in Turkish and translating it into English in seconds, which causes many grammatical errors and also for possible pronunciation mistakes. I hope you enjoy the video, and with your likes and subscribes, you will show your support to enhance the community we will reach. As our first video in English, I will talk about a significant historical character who is so important to me. A monument of sacrifice, a true legend who could leave his comfort for other people, a revolutionary guerrilla leader whose real name is Ernesto Guevara de la Serna, but you know him as Che Guevara. In addition to being a theorist, he is the last legendary commander of the modern world has seen. I prefer to call him the last global hero. A character who has been accepted as a martyr of democracy and revolution and a hero worldwide. Especially those who defend the left ideology has become a symbol of the left radicalism and anti-imperialism. We will have a deeper look at his life, which has earned the respect of millions. I hope this historical journey excites you as much as I do. Let's start a fantastic trip together. He is neither an Argentinian he was born in, nor the Cuban. Ernesto is the first of 5 children born to an aristocratic family of Irish Basque descent. He has Irish rebel blood in his veins, as his father said. The family is also left-sided and anti-fascist, since the door of his house was open for many Spanish intellectuals who had fled from the Franco-fascist regime. He overheard the heated debates at home. These conversations, as he eavesdropped on, affected his future life deeply. His relationship with his mother was exceptional. Education was crucial for the family. He learned French from his mother and also English at school. Their house was full with over 3,000 wide range of great books written by different authors, like Karl Marx to Jules Verne, Kafka to Jean-Paul Sartre. And little Ernesto thrived in this environment. Sartre, whose books he read as a child, will come to Cuba to meet him in 1960 and call him not only an intellectual but also the perfect man of era. With knowing his life well, it's hard to disagree with him. Little Ernesto started to read and write at the age of 4. Even though you always know him as a Latin American guerrilla in green uniforms, but he had a tremendous intellectual structure. He's even more intellectual than one would grow up in a Latin America environment of that time. He was 7 years old when he was questioning why their mates are making less money than other people. He liked chess a lot and he was a good player as well. At a young age, he interested in poetry too. He especially loves to read Neruda, one of the leading poets of Latin America, as you know, and the great Spanish poet Machado. There are many stories about his childhood, but we will find it difficult to touch on the revolutionary life that needs to be highlighted if we get stuck here. So I'll go through that part rapidly. He had asthma, but he was playing sports anyway, but mostly he played rugby when he was young. They call him El Frobindo, which means angry. If he lived today, they would probably call him Rapido y Furioso, which means fast and furious. He should be in great pain while playing, but he was very successful in sports, thanks to his ambition. He started his medical education at the University of Buenos Aires in 1948. While he was studying there, his name among his friends was Chanco, which means pig, because he was not a fan of taking shower. It didn't bother him a lot. He was a total athlete, selfless, a doctoral candidate, ready to sacrifice his life for others. That was the honor he was looking for, most probably. In 1950s, his motorcycle trips to poor territories of Latin America made him know the real world's problems better. As he sees severe poverty, he understands that he must determine the order of priorities in his life. It was devastating for him to see little children while they were starving, sick, and in misery. He took a break for 9 months from medical school for another motorcycle trip with his friend Alberto Granado in December 1951, and his point of view completely changed on that journey. The route started from Argentina to Chile, Peru, Colombia, and Venezuela, and he came Miami last and flew back to Argentina, Buenos Aires. When he was in Chile, he stayed in a leisure house and worked as a volunteer doctor there to help the Paris people. He was full of love for needy people. There's a movie about the journey called The Motorcycle Diaries. One of my favorite Latin American movie star, Gael Garcia Bernal, is in this movie as Ernesto Guevara. He's also starring in one of my favorite other movie, which is Amores Perros, Loves and Dogs. This motorcycle trip was an essential turning point in his life. While he was on this trip, he started to think that it was impossible to save Latin America as different states, unity in all Latin America, and the Red Revolution was the savior. His first stop was Guatemala to carry out the revolution he envisioned. As soon as the school was over, he moved there to help Jacobo Arbenz. Arbenz established a government in Guatemala, which we can call ahead of the revolutionary understanding of those years. Arbenz made a significant land reform that will expropriate all uncultivated parts of the extensive lands which belong to individuals and companies and distribute them to the farmers who has no land. It was mainly bothering American companies using Guatemala farms to produce their fruits to sell in the United States and to the entire world. It is quite coincidence that one of the shareholders of the biggest fruit company in Guatemala was also the US Secretary of the State. His name is not worth to mention for the sake of keeping the story clean. Ernesto thought if Arbenz's reform were successful, it could be hope for all Latin American countries, and decided to settle in Guatemala, help him to shape a communist revolution. In July, he traveled to Mexico City, by the way, where he met Fidel and Raul Castro brothers, who were committed to overthrowing the Batista dictatorship in Cuba, which they were in prison before, and they just came Mexico to start their revolution. Ernesto found their aim exciting, but their first touch ended there, and Ernesto returned to Guatemala. Although he wanted to join to Arbenz's militia, the disorder and the inaction in the team's administration made him change his mind, and he joined just as a medic. When a CIA-backed, Hitler-mustached right-wing Armas-controlled coup destroyed the Arbenz government in 1954, the US government became the main enemy of Che. The idea of liberating Latin America should only be achieved by fighting against the United States. Arbenz took refuge in the Mexican embassy and sent a message to his foreign friends that he wanted them to leave the country. Guevara is not a coward or a fugitive. He makes repeated calls for resistance, but after these calls didn't receive any good response and a warrant was issued for his arrest. He was forced to take refuge in the Argentine embassy. Under the protection of the Argentine government, he left the country and went to Mexico to meet the Castro brothers and embarks on a new quest for revolution. It would be not wrong to say that Ernesto gained his real revolutionary identity in Guatemala. He believed that fighting with guns was the only solution against the imperialist power. The worldwide acceptance of Marx's ideas could start a revolution in Latin America. By the way, Che gets his nickname not in Cuba, but in here, Mexico. If you search it through the books or the web, you encounter information that Che used to say this word so often, and it means dude, which is why people named him Che. Indeed, the story is a bit different than that. He was saying Che a lot, which is true. It certainly implies dude in Spanish, but in Argentina, this word is usually used by local people at the end of the sentence, not to mean dude, but to say right. You can see the same thing with Canadians, as you know. So there should be some people around you who use the same phrase. Otherwise, Che was not roaming around and saying, "What's up, dude?" like Bugs Bunny does. He has married here with Hilda Gadea, who has laid the groundwork for him in Guatemala, and his first child was born in here. He will have 4 more kids with different mothers for the rest of his life. While Che was still a doctor in Mexico, not a guerrilla yet, he was the member of one of the essential pillars of the Cuban Revolution, which is 26th of July movement. So one day, 81 people, or 82, who set out from Mexico, get on a 25 capacity boat and go to Oriente. The Cuban army detects them and destroys almost all of them, Che survived from this clash. Now the weapon he took from a fallen guerrilla friend was in his hand to stay for the rest of his life. And when they came to Sierra Maestra Mountains, form a guerrilla army with the few remaining friends, like 20 people, the accurate time of his life was over. Now he's a guerrilla commander, and his fearlessness in fight was fascinating everyone. In an article about him, Che's fearlessness reception to that was linked to the influence of Nietzsche, which he read when he was a teenager. And now he was with Castro brothers, especially Fidel's most trusted man he was. All resistance militants wanted to see this legendary Argentinian commander. He developed new guerrilla warfare tactics, and he also kept diaries about them and published a book describing these post-revolutionary tactics, which is Pasagues de la Guerra Revolucionaria. We know this period of his life very well, thanks to the journals he kept. It's also a heartbreaking and sad story of that term. It will not be wrong to say that it was a period that includes extrajudicial executions and that cruelty was taken to keep the revolution principles alive. The execution of Guevara, for example. Guevara was a guy who allegedly gave the Cuban Air Force the location of militants in exchange for a few thousand of pesos, or the mass executions when he commanded in La Cabaña fortress was cruel, and it was after the revolution, of course. While he served in La Cabaña castle, for example, 50 to 100 people, some say 150 people, were executed under Che's command, so some of them were killed by his own hands. So, for the next episode, we're gonna talk about what was Cuba like under Batista's government, how was Havana become one of the most developed cities in that region, what did Cuba means for Americans, and how did the post-revolutionary government shape. Also, we're going to talk about how did the legendary picture Guerrillero Heroico, which means hero guerrilla, is also the most famous portrait in the world, has been taken by a fashion photographer by luck, and why did it become so famous? While he was the director of the central bank and head of Cuba's finance, why did Che disagree with all the ministers and left the country? Did he fight with Fidel Castro? We're gonna have information about that on the next episode. How did he get plastic surgery and hide from CIA? How was he killed and reborn as a legend? Why did they cut off his hands? Why were his bones not found until 1997? I will try to answer all these questions and more in the second episode. Thank you for listening to the end. See you again soon. Take care and stay safe.